In 1982, a young Phoenix police officer vanished during a routine night patrol. No body, no witnesses, just a badge left behind and a whisper that she ran. But 42 years later, her bones surface in the desert, alongside a second badge and a voice recording that was never meant to be heard. What happened to Officer Valerie Cruz? And how deep does the rot inside the department go? This is the story of the cop who tried to speak and the force that buried her alive. Phoenix, Arizona, August 7th, 2024. It began the way silence always does. Slow, unnoticed, and irreversible. A concrete wall groaned, gave, and split open like a wound. The demolition crew paused, dust thick in the desert air. A foreman swore. A younger worker stumbled backward, hands shaking. Something had fallen from the cavity between the dry wall and insulation. A badge. Phoenix Police Department. Number etched but worn. Rust haloed the rim. Dried blood coated the back. They stared. Then someone saw the second object. A chunk of duct tape, curled like a dead tongue, caked with what looked like hair, and beneath it, embedded in decades-old foam padding. A human molar. No one said a word until the medic showed up. When he did, the youngest worker whispered what everyone had already started to believe. Someone didn't want her found. August 7th, 1982. South Phoenix, Arizona. Valerie Cruz had worked enough Friday nights to know the smell of blood when it mixed with Arizona dust. It didn't matter how many air fresheners a trailer could hold. Copper always cut through. Her cruiser rolled to a stop on the edge of Desert Star Mobile Home Park, tires crunching over gravel and broken glass. The sun had dipped behind the rust-colored hills, but the heat still rose in waves off the pavement, baking the underside of her car and making her thighs stick to the seat. Unit 12, on scene. One male, one female. Looks bad, she said into her radio, but there was no response. Just static. She tried again. Dispatch, this is Unit 12. I've got a possible domestic at Desert Star. Lot 9. Repeat, Lot 9. Requesting... The radio hissed. Then nothing. Great. The last time she'd had trouble with dispatch was 3 weeks ago. Someone had accidentally reassigned her frequency. That someone wore bars. That someone didn't like that a 28-year-old woman had made detective candidate in 2 years flat. Valerie killed the engine and stepped out into the stale electric heat. Her boots crunched on sand and shattered bottle glass. The trailer in front of her was dark. No porch light, no TV glow. Just a screen door barely holding to its hinges, flapping with the desert wind. A dented Pontiac sat out front, hood still warm. No plates. There was blood on the handle. She unlatched her sidearm, kept it holstered but ready. Walked to the door. Knocked. Phoenix PD, anyone home? No answer. Another knock, louder this time. Police, open up! A shuffle inside. Movement. Valerie's grip tightened. The door creaked open 2 inches. A brown eye blinked at her through the gap. Then, he's gone. The door opened wider. A woman stood barefoot in a blood-stained tank top, a cigarette trembling between her fingers. Her lip was split. Bruising bloomed around her neck. Her arms were shaking, but her eyes were strangely calm, like she'd already left her body. He left, Valerie asked. Are you alone? The woman looked behind her, hesitated. Number not exactly. Valerie didn't like the way she said that. She stepped inside. The smell hit her first. Bleach. Something cooked and chemical. Blood, not fresh, but not dry either. The woman stood to the side, still holding the door. You didn't call this in, Valerie said quietly. The woman looked at her. Number I didn't. Valerie turned her head just slightly. The bathroom door in the hall was open just a crack. Light on, shadows moving. Then she saw it. A boot, behind the kitchen counter. Black leather, not civilian, cop issued. Valerie unholstered her weapon, raised it. "Show me your hands," she called. Silence. "I said—" The man stepped out, badge visible, uniform wrinkled but intact. Face she recognized. Officer Darren Kinney. Beat patrol, same precinct, worked the night shift. Dirty as hell. "Easy," he said. Hands up. "Just trying to clean up a mess." "What are you doing here?" "Doing you a favor. I got the call." "No," Kinney said. "You got sent." Valerie's spine prickled. Her trigger finger twitched. "What the hell does that mean?" Another voice, behind her this time. Low, cold, calm. "It means you walked into the wrong damn trailer." Before she could turn, the first blow came fast, a hard crack across the back of her skull. Her knees hit linoleum, her vision tunneled. As she collapsed, the last thing she saw was the woman. Still holding the door open, still watching, still silent. The records clerk looked like he hadn't slept in a month. He blinked at Naomi through thick glasses, his fingers twitching above his keyboard like he was debating whether to help her or not. "Those files are sealed," he muttered. She placed both badge photos on the counter, Cruz and Kincaid. Bloodied, bagged, time-stamped. 2 officers, 2 disappearances, same month, same wall. He stared at them for a beat longer than he should have. "I just pull boxes," he said. "But you read them," Naomi replied. "You know what was redacted." He glanced over his shoulder, then again, then slowly stood, motioned her to follow. "No digital trail," he said. "You didn't get this from me." They descended into the sub-basement of records. Below the basement, no one talked about. The lights flickered. The air was thick with paper rot and mold. It smelled like the kind of truth people were afraid to exhume. He led her to an unmarked filing cabinet, 3rd drawer down, tucked between 2 water-damaged shelves. Inside, a thin brown accordion folder labeled "Do Not Pursue." She opened it. Inside were 5 documents. A blurred Polaroid of Cruz and Kincaid, grainy and distant, standing outside a diner at midnight. A partial dispatch tape transcript. The domestic call Valerie answered had been tagged off-channel. A hand-scribbled list of names. 4 were crossed out in red ink. A copy of a disciplinary memo filed against Lieutenant Marcus Sims, never submitted. And a hand-drawn map. 4 red X's marked the desert northeast of Camelback. One was labeled Cruz. This was misfiled under a cold narcotics case from 1986, the clerk said. "Someone buried it, not deleted, buried." Naomi stared at the list. Sims, Kinney. Another name she didn't recognize, R. Adams. And then T. Menendez, the current deputy commissioner. She nearly dropped the file. "I need copies of everything." He shook his head. "I can't make copies." Naomi's voice dropped low. "Then I'm taking it." A long pause. "Take it." By dusk, Naomi was in her apartment. Documents spread across her floor like a crime scene of their own. The list was a road map. The map, if accurate, was a goddamn graveyard. She called Ruben Vega. He didn't answer. She called her old partner, Gabe Torres, now working with state police. She didn't explain everything, just asked for a favor. "You still got drone access?" she asked. He whistled. "You looking for someone?" "I'm looking for what someone buried." Hours later, he sent her grainy overhead footage. 4 sites, desert scrub. One had a freshly disturbed patch of dirt about the size of a body. "Looks recent," he said. "Storm last week may have unearthed part of it. You heading out?" She didn't answer right away, because her screen lit up again, this time with a new message. No name, just a number. Unknown. Attached. A photo. A picture of her standing outside the records room that morning. Caption: "You're getting close. Stop digging." Present day. Phoenix, Arizona. August 7th, 2024. The stench of old fiberglass and rat droppings hung thick in the demo house as Detective Naomi Garcia ducked under the police tape, flashing her badge at the patrolmen posted out front. "Third one this week," he said, stepping aside. "But this one's different." Naomi arched an eyebrow. "How different?" He didn't answer, just pointed to the pile of debris under a blown-out living room wall, where the forensic techs were already setting up portable lights and a mobile DNA station. The foreman, still pale, leaned against a window frame dragging on a cigarette like oxygen. "She was in the wall," he muttered as Naomi approached. "Jesus Christ, she was in the wall." "Not her," the tech corrected. "Just a badge, a tooth, some blood. So far." Naomi crouched near the open cavity. Inside the stud frame was a sealed black evidence bag already tagged, labeled with a date that hadn't been seen in department files in over 40 years. August 7th, 1982. The same date as today. Coincidence didn't sit right with her. She nodded toward the bag. "What else?" "Badge, Phoenix PD, number 2917, the tech said, glancing at his notes. "Nameplate degraded but mostly readable. Cruz, Valerie." Naomi blinked. "Say that again." "Cruz, Valerie. Missing persons pulled it in less than 5 minutes. Went off the grid mid-shift in 1982. No body, no vehicle, no leads. Case was quietly labeled AWOL after 2 weeks. No press release, no internal investigation. Buried." "AWOL?" Naomi asked sharply. "They did that to a cop." The tech looked up at her, eyes grim. "They did it to a woman." In 1982, Naomi stood slowly, her hands clenched. Something old and hot stirred in her chest, a mix of anger and instinct. "Anything else?" she asked. He handed her a sealed evidence pouch. Inside, a voice recorder, dust-caked, analog. The kind used before digital logging systems, before body cams, before accountability. "We've got audio," he said, "if we can restore it." Naomi's pulse ticked faster. "Do it." He nodded and signaled to the tech with a forensic laptop. Naomi turned toward the foreman. "Who found it?" "I did," he said quietly. "We were knocking down the old outer wall to rerun electrical. Paneling split open like a damn piñata." "You touch anything?" He shook his head. "Just backed off and called it in. Look, lady, I've seen dead rats in meth labs. But that?" He pointed to the blood-streaked insulation and the tooth bagged nearby. "That's someone who was meant to disappear." Naomi already knew. Because someone hid her. Because someone in this city wanted her forgotten. They played the tape on a borrowed relic of a machine. An old Panasonic micro-cassette player brought up from evidence storage, its buttons worn smooth and half the lettering gone. The recording started with a hiss, then nothing, then static, and then crying. A woman's voice, muffled, wet with fear. Naomi leaned closer, heart thudding as the audio sharpened. "Please, I didn't tell anyone. I swear," another voice answered, male, deep, calm in the way that felt worse than shouting. "You were warned. You think the badge makes you untouchable?" There was a soft scuffle, like feet shifting on linoleum. Then a slap, sharp, flat, skin on skin. The woman cried out again. Naomi didn't breathe. "This doesn't have to be hard, Val," the man said. "You made it hard." A pause. Then a second male voice entered, lower, older, colder. "Finish it." The tape whined, distorted. "Make it look like she ran." Silence. The room at the tech lab was suddenly ice cold. Naomi stepped back from the table. Her jaw clenched so tight her teeth ached. One of the techs stopped the tape, his hand hovering nervously over the eject button. "Jesus," he muttered. "That was a cop talking." "Two," Naomi said. "They knew her. They used her name. One of them had called her Val. Not Officer Cruz. Not Cruz. Val. That wasn't formal. That was personal. That meant they'd known her well. maybe even worked beside her. "They killed her," she said quietly. The text said nothing. They didn't need to. "Run voice match," she ordered. "Whatever samples we've got from old staff logs, radio dispatch, interview archives, run them all." The younger tech hesitated. "You sure? That's going to cross some flags. If one of those voices matches a current officer, IA's gonna want in." Naomi's eyes were hard. "Let them come." She left the lab and took the stairwell to clear her head. The heat outside slammed into her like a wall, dry and aggressive, the kind of desert heat that baked truth into bones and left lies to rot. She lit a cigarette, something she only did when her gut told her the ground was about to shift. This wasn't just a cold case anymore. This was murder, covered up, by someone wearing the same badge she wore now. And if the recording was real, and she had no reason to think it wasn't, then Valerie Cruz hadn't disappeared. She'd been silenced, and someone at Phoenix PD made sure it stayed that way for 42 years. She'd been on the force just long enough to stop flinching at the smell. Blood, bleach, cigarettes, faint ammonia from whatever chemical cocktail the trailer's owner had tried to use to scrub the scene. Valerie Cruz knew it wasn't working. You could always smell what people tried to erase. The woman in the tank top, she still hadn't moved. She stood by the door like she was waiting for a cue, cigarette burnt to ash between her fingers, eyes blank and unreadable. Valerie wanted to ask who the hell she was, why she hadn't run, why her face said "I knew this was coming," but there wasn't time, because Officer Darren Kinney was in her line of sight now, and he wasn't supposed to be here. "You're a long way from your beat," she said, keeping her Glock low but ready. Kinney smiled like this was some bad poker game. "So are you." Her stomach twisted. "You intercepted the call." He didn't answer, didn't need to. Valerie heard the creak of a floorboard behind her and stepped sideways instinctively, just as a second figure emerged from the hallway. Lieutenant Marcus Sims. Shit, he was supposed to be off shift, supervising swing patrol out of North Precinct, not skulking in a trailer in South Phoenix with a known dirty cop. He didn't look surprised to see her, just annoyed. "You weren't supposed to get this one, Cruz," Sims said, stepping forward with the deliberate gait of a man who never rushed anything, violence included. "It was a cleanup call. We sent Kinney." "You logged it as domestic," she said, voice sharp. "It was domestic," Kinney added with a smirk. She fought back, broke protocol, got handled. Valerie glanced at the woman by the door again. Still no reaction, like she'd been practicing going numb. "Who is she?" Valerie asked. Kinney shrugged. "Doesn't matter. She's not our problem anymore." Sims sighed, pulled off his gloves, and looked her dead in the eye. "You should have kept driving." Her radio crackled weakly. Static. Then a few squelched words she couldn't make out. She reached for it anyway, raising the mic. "Dispatch, this is Unit 12, requesting immediate—" She didn't finish. Kinney moved fast, too fast for a man who looked that slouched, and slammed into her side, knocking the mic from her hand and pinning her against the wall. She elbowed him in the ribs, hard enough to hear something pop. But Sims was already behind her. A blow to her lower back, another to her side. She gasped. Her knees buckled. "I warned you," Sims hissed. "You dig where you're not invited, and you get buried." They forced her down, hands on her wrists, something tight around her face. Zip ties, rough ones. The woman by the door finally looked away. Coward, Valerie thought. But part of her understood. Sometimes survival meant silence. Sims leaned close, his breath sour. "You were going to be a good detective. Too good, that's the problem." And then something cold and metal pressed against her neck. Not a gun, a syringe. "Number, let her sleep," Sims said to Kinney, as darkness overtook her. She woke hours later, barely. Her mouth was dry, her tongue thick. Duct tape stretched across her lips. The smell of vinyl and heat filled her nostrils. She was in a trunk, hands bound, head splitting. The car was moving, bouncing, rough terrain, desert. She knew the road. It was old, off-grid, south of Camelback, toward the washes where abandoned tires went to die, and coyotes dragged garbage into the ravines. They were going to kill her. No court, no badge, just an unmarked grave in the dirt. And if no one was expecting her, if no one checked the logs, if the call never existed, then Valerie Cruz would vanish forever. She twisted her wrists, felt blood slick her fingers. The ties were too tight. The car stopped. Doors opened. Footsteps, shovels. She waited for the sound of the trunk unlatching. Instead, she heard Sims again, just faintly through the metal. Make sure it's deep, and leave the radio. Let him think she ran. The badge should have been a lead. Instead, it was a wall. Naomi sat in her office long after sunset, the sounds of the department muffled behind the closed door, phones ringing, printers churning, boots squeaking across linoleum, the hum of police life, and under it all, something rotten no one wanted to name. Valerie Cruz's badge was logged as found property, the tooth tagged as possible human remains, the voice recording marked for lab transfer pending digital recovery. Everything was by the book. That was the problem. Every time Naomi filed a request to reopen the Cruz case, it bounced. IA claimed jurisdiction. Cold case claimed priority. The lieutenant over records claimed he couldn't release 1982 files without sign-off from higher up. Everyone smiled. Everyone stalled. She was being boxed in. She leaned back, arms folded, eyes burning holes into the half-lit ceiling. On her desk sat the only physical case file available on Valerie Cruz. Thin, too thin, a single photocopied page, the kind they used for officers who left voluntarily. AWOL after shift, it read. No contact. Suspected personal crisis. File closed, August 24th, 1982. No mention of blood. No mention of a missing cruiser. No scene report. No dispatcher testimony. Just a note that Cruz had possibly fled state due to disciplinary stress. Nonsense. Naomi flipped the folder shut and stood. She needed answers from someone who'd been there, someone who still remembered the ghost. She knew exactly who to call. An hour later, she was standing on the porch of a trailer in East Mesa, knocking on the dented aluminum door of a man who hadn't worn his badge in 30 years. His name was Ruben Vega, retired detective, Valerie's former partner. He opened the door wearing a gray tank top and a scowl, one eye cloudy with cataract, the other sharp as broken glass. "Let me guess," he muttered. "You found the badge." Naomi didn't react. "Can I come in?" "No," he said. Then, after a beat, "But I won't slam the door either." He stepped aside. She followed. The inside smelled like dust and old coffee. Newspapers stacked knee-high, an ancient box fan wheezing in the corner. On the wall, still nailed crooked above the couch, was a framed photo of Ruben and Valerie in uniform. Young, proud, standing outside a beat-up cruiser with smiles that hadn't yet learned what betrayal felt like. "You knew she didn't run," Naomi said. Ruben dropped into his recliner with a grunt. Knew it the minute they filed the report. She had a dog she didn't take, plants she didn't water, a mother she called every Sunday. And they let it go? He laughed bitterly. Let it go? They buried it, buried her. Naomi sat on the edge of a wooden chair. "Tell me." Ruben hesitated, then sighed. Val was looking into something before she disappeared. Said it started with a domestic call that didn't add up. A woman said she'd been beaten but wouldn't press charges. Said they'd already been by. Val didn't let it go. She started digging. Said she thought some of the reports were being scrubbed, maybe by another cop. Did she say who? He shook his head. Only that she was scared and angry. "Why didn't you come forward?" His jaw clenched. "Because I was a coward." I thought she'd turn up, or that if I pushed, I'd end up like her. Quiet, gone. I kept my head down, got promoted, retired. I've seen her face every night since. Naomi pulled out a copy of the original file. Her final call. It's missing from the dispatch log. No address, no recording. But I found this. She slid the photo across the table. It was a snapshot from that day's demolition site. The badge, the blood, the recorder. Reuben stared at it. You ever hear of Lieutenant Marcus Sims? She asked. His eyes flicked up fast. Yeah, North Side. Transferred out the year after Val went missing, retired with a pension, still hosts the department charity gala. Naomi opened her notebook. He was there. She saw the truth settle behind Reuben's eyes like ash. Then he said, There's a name you won't find in the file. Officer Darren Kinney. Dirty as hell. Protected like a fucking senator. You want to know what happened to Val? Start with Kinney. Last person she mentioned by name. Where do I find him? Hell if I know, Reuben muttered. Last I heard, he left the force under medical leave. But if you want dirt on him, talk to dispatch. Naomi stood. Appreciate your time. He grabbed her wrist, grip surprisingly strong. She was good, he said. Better than me. That's why she's dead. Naomi held his gaze. No, she said. That's why she's going to be found. She woke choking on dirt. Dry, sharp, packed behind her teeth. It filled her mouth, her nose, her ears. Her wrists screamed in agony as she twisted against the zip ties, the skin rubbed raw and bleeding. A low moan escaped her throat, barely audible beneath the weight pressing down on her. Number not yet. Not here. The first few attempts to move failed. Her limbs were heavy, disobedient. Her lungs wouldn't expand. The air tasted like rust and earth and whatever cheap solvent they'd used to knock her out. Then, her knee shifted. Hit something soft, hollow, loose dirt. She was not buried deep. They'd gotten lazy, maybe scared. Maybe they thought the desert would finish the job. Valerie Cruz opened her mouth and screamed. Nothing came out, just air and grit and blood. She clawed upward. Nails cracked, arms burned. Her body revolted, but her brain locked in. Move, move or die. She kicked, elbowed, tore through inches of loose soil until her hand broke through, first to air, then to a pale blue sky. A hand grabbed hers, rough, calloused, familiar. He pulled. She burst into the sunlight like a corpse reborn, gasping, vomiting sand, sobbing, screaming. Val, Jesus Christ, breathe. She blinked. Bill Kincaid. Sweat poured from his forehead. Dirt streaked his face. He looked like hell, but he was alive. What? She tried to speak, but her voice came out shredded. They buried you, he said. Same plan they had for me. How'd you? I followed Kinney. 2 nights ago. Watched him meet Sims at that same trailer. Thought it was a drug drop. Didn't realize they were hunting us both. Kincaid knelt beside her, hands trembling as he cut the zip ties with a folding knife. I heard your call over the scanner. They must have screwed up the radio jam. I came as fast as I could, but by the time I got here... He looked toward the makeshift grave, disgusted. They were already gone. She sat up slowly. The pain was unreal. Her side was broken. She knew it. Something was cracked, maybe a rib, maybe 2. But she was alive, and now she understood. This wasn't just a domestic, she rasped. This was a dump site. Kincaid nodded grimly. I think there are more. I think this is how they clean house. They didn't go to the hospital. They couldn't. No one could be trusted. Instead, Kincaid took her to a motel off I-10, one of those old highway shitholes with cigarette burns in the curtains and a TV that only played static. He patched her up, brought food, didn't ask questions. They stayed there 2 nights. On the 3rd morning, they made a plan. Go public, report Sims, record everything. Valerie had already gathered evidence before her shift. The suspicious logs, the altered dispatch reports, the names that kept popping up in dead-end investigations. She'd stashed it in a locked box at her apartment. If they could get it, they could build a case. They agreed to meet at dawn. But dawn never came. When Valerie returned to the motel after a short supply run, Kincaid was gone. Room stripped, blood in the sink. One thing left on the pillow, his badge. She ran. She didn't go home. She didn't report it, because she knew what would happen. If they got her again, they'd finish the job. Quiet, permanent. So she disappeared. But before she did, she left one final breadcrumb. She broke into an abandoned house slated for demolition, one that used to be owned by Sims's cousin, now vacant. She sealed her badge, the bloody tape, and the voice recorder into the wall behind a fake panel, next to a loose tooth she'd bitten clean through during the first assault. If she didn't make it, someone would. Someday. In the present, Naomi stood in front of the same lot. The house was a skeleton now, half-gutted. Police tape danced in the hot wind. Techs buzzed around it like flies, but she wasn't looking at them. She was staring at a small patch of desert scrubland just a mile beyond the fence. The same desert where Kincaid had once pulled Valerie from the grave. She didn't know how yet, but she would find it. The real grave. The other bodies. The real truth. And when she did, the whole damned apartment would burn. The evidence lab reeked of bleach, latex, and old paper, a smell Naomi was beginning to associate with things people weren't supposed to find. She stood over the table where the demolition site artifacts were spread out under harsh white lights. The badge, the cassette recorder, the duct tape, the tooth, and something else. It had fallen out during second-round sorting, missed the first time, stuck to the back panel behind the insulation, nearly thrown out with the debris. Another badge. This one was bent, the metal warped as if crushed under weight. The number was barely visible. The nameplate, however, was intact. Kincaid, William Phoenix PD Unit 44. Naomi stared at it, heart thudding. "Kincaid?" she asked the forensics tech. "When did this come in?" "2 hours ago," the woman replied. "Same wall, same sealed panel. Must have been behind a second layer. No one noticed at first." Naomi picked up the bagged badge, holding it to the light. Blood on the edges, dried, flaked. Rust where the pin had once attached. "Did anyone run it?" The tech nodded. "Already flagged. Officer William Kincaid. Went missing 3 weeks after Valerie Cruz. Also marked AWOL. Same year, same bullshit file, no body, no follow-up." Naomi's stomach twisted. "Anyone ever connect the two?" "Nope. Separate incidents, different precincts. No overlap, on paper." But Naomi already knew better. Cruz and Kincaid were linked. She could feel it. The second badge didn't just confirm her suspicion, it made it impossible to ignore. 2 cops, gone within a month of each other. 2 cases labeled AWOL. 2 badges sealed in the same wall. This wasn't a coincidence. It was a burial. Naomi dug into the archived disciplinary files. Kincaid had 1 prior infraction, a fight with another officer during a training session, sealed by IA. No details. But in the old precinct yearbook photo, there it was, Cruz and Kincaid, side by side. No smiles, just the blank, cautious expressions of 2 people who knew the weight of the badge and who wore it anyway. She flipped through deployment rosters. On the week Kincaid vanished, he'd been working desk duty, night shifts, off the street, but the logs were full of corrections, black marker strikeouts, overwritten names. Then she found it. 1-line entry. Faint, barely legible. The night before he disappeared. Unit 44, field request. Backup, Unit 12. South Sector. Time, 23:41. Unit 12, Valerie Cruz. Her finger hovered over the line, heart pounding. Kincaid hadn't been off the street. He'd been with her. And then he vanished too. She didn't need more proof, but she needed more leverage. Because whoever buried these files and these people was still watching, still pulling strings, still dangerous. By midnight, she was at a payphone outside a shuttered gas station on the west side, an old trick she hadn't used since undercover narcotics. She didn't trust department lines. Not now. She dialed Ruben Vega. He picked up on the first ring. "I found Kincaid's badge," she said. Dead silence on the other end. Then, "Where?" "Same wall, same house. 2 cops didn't run. They were killed, buried." "God damn," he whispered. "You need to be careful. You're stirring up old ghosts, Garcia." "They're not ghosts if they were murdered," she said. "They're evidence." "You think someone's still cleaning up after all these years?" "I think someone never stopped." Naomi barely made it home before sunrise. She slept on the couch with her gun on the coffee table. Her phone buzzed just after 6 a.m. Unknown number. She answered, groggy. "Garcia?" A voice, male, low, familiar. "You don't want to keep digging," he said. "It won't bring them back." Then he hung up. She didn't recognize the voice. But it didn't matter. They were watching. She slid the second badge into her evidence bag and called for a shovel. She left the department car behind. Too easy to trace. Borrowed her cousin's old Jeep. No GPS, no onboard camera, no department beacon. Naomi hit the trailhead just after 5 a.m., headlights bouncing off desert scrub and broken fencing. The air was already hot, dense with that dry, baked electric scent only Arizona could conjure. She parked near the last red X from the map, marked Cruz. It was remote. No tire tracks, no signs of hikers, just a washed-out arroyo and a half-collapsed barbed wire fence rusting in the sun. The ground sloped unevenly here, like it had shifted in recent storms. Loose rocks. Shale. Something churned beneath it all, hidden by years of wind and silence. Naomi grabbed a shovel from the Jeep, started digging. 10 minutes in, sweat soaked her collar. 20 minutes in, the earth changed. A patch of packed clay gave way to something lighter, softer, disturbed. The shovel hit something. She dropped to her knees, pulled with her hands. Fiberglass, a strip of black trash bag, a torn corner of what looked like a nylon patrol jacket, faded blue, burned at the edges, and then bone, white, porous, human. She covered her mouth, then kept digging. It didn't take long to find the rest. A shallow grave, no more than 3 feet deep. The remains curled in on themselves, as if the body had been folded. Duct tape still clung to fragments of what had once been a uniform. Her badge was gone, but her sidearm was still holstered. Holstered, loaded. She never even drew it. Naomi sat back, breath catching in her throat. She didn't need dental records to confirm it. It was Valerie Cruz. She didn't call it in. Not yet. She took photos. Every angle. Tagged the coordinates. Documented the position of the bones, the placement of the holster, the fabric color and stitch pattern on the jacket. Then she saw it, wedged in the dirt beneath the skull. A strip of analog cassette tape. Frayed. Stuck to what looked like a small rusted audio component. Another recorder, buried with her. Insurance. Naomi bagged it carefully. Only then did she call it in, on a burner phone routed through the state tip line, anonymously. Let the state boys dig her out. She couldn't risk the department interfering. Not yet. She wasn't done, because there were 3 other red X's on that map. She drove straight to Ruben Vega's trailer, pounded on the door. He opened it, eyes bloodshot. Not from sleep. "I know where they buried her," she said. He didn't ask how. Just stepped aside. Naomi dropped the evidence bag on his kitchen table. Inside, a photo of the remains, a piece of Valerie's uniform, and the cassette. "She's been there for 42 years, Naomi said. lying under the dirt with a tape that might name her killer. Reuben lowered himself into a chair, staring down at the bag. For a long time, he said nothing. Then, if Sims buried her, someone helped him. Someone still on the job. Naomi nodded. And I think I know who. She slid the list of names across the table, the one she found in the sealed file. Reuben's eyes scanned the page. His hand stopped at one name. T. Menendez. Jesus, he whispered. Tim Menendez was Sims' boot. They were joined at the hip in '82. He's the deputy commissioner now, Naomi said. Reuben sat back slowly. Then this goes way deeper than we thought. She nodded. And if we don't move carefully, it's going to bury both of us too. Tim Menendez smiled like a man who'd won before she even walked through the door. His office was a museum of authority. Framed commendations, department plaques, black and white photos of dead sheriffs and old revolvers, a thin blue line flag on one wall, an unopened bottle of scotch on the shelf. Still sealed, still performative. Deputy Commissioner Menendez rose from behind his desk with an outstretched hand. Naomi didn't take it. She dropped the envelope on the table instead. Photos, she said, of Valerie Cruz's body. Found yesterday. Buried east of Camelback, 3 feet down, still in uniform. He didn't flinch, just slowly unsealed the envelope. Glanced inside, closed it. Jesus, he muttered, almost convincingly. You're sure it's her? Naomi stared him down. She was buried with her department-issued sidearm and a voice recorder. That caught him. Just the flicker of a blink. Just enough. Recorder? He asked. After 40 years? It's being restored now, Naomi lied. But some of the tape's intact. Menendez leaned back slowly, folding his hands on his gut. Well, if what you're saying is true, this is a tragedy. For the department, for the Cruz family. He said it like he'd practiced it, like he'd always known this day might come. I'll make sure Internal Affairs opens a full inquiry. You'll do nothing, Naomi said flatly. He raised an eyebrow. I know about Sims, she continued. I know about Kinney. I know about Kincaid. And I know you were assigned to the same precinct as Cruz in 1982. You were her training officer. You signed her patrol log the night she vanished. She slid another photo across the table. A copy of the page from records. Signature, T. Menendez. Memory's a funny thing, he said quietly. 40 years. People forget what they think they saw. Names get confused. Files get lost. Naomi leaned in. You didn't lose anything. You buried it. He met her gaze, unblinking now. You want to know what I learned in this job, Detective Garcia? He asked. The badge means nothing. She didn't speak. It's just a piece of metal, Menendez said. A license, a pass. People think it stands for truth, justice, whatever. But all it really means is you get to choose who matters. He stood. His face hardened. And right now, you don't. Naomi stood too. Valerie Cruz mattered. Menendez smirked. Not enough to stop us. She stepped closer. I'm not trying to stop you, she said. I'm going to drag you into the damn light. Then she turned and walked out. In the parking lot, she climbed into her Jeep, heart pounding like a war drum, hands shaking. The city shimmered beyond the glass. Heat waves blurred the skyline. She pulled out her phone, dialed Torres. Activate it, she said. The recorder in the badge box. Hidden microphone. Menendez never checked for it. We got everything. Torres let out a low whistle. You were wearing a wire? No, she said. I was the wire. The news broke just after 9 a.m. It started as a whisper. First on internal comms, then citywide. Deputy Commissioner Timothy Menendez under investigation. Possible connection to historic officer disappearance. Multiple high-ranking officials named. By noon, it was a flood. Phoenix PD rocked by explosive reopening of 1982 missing persons case. Allegations of systemic cover-ups spanning decades. Recovered remains identified as Officer Valerie Cruz. Naomi stood just inside the squad room, watching the chaos unfold. Phones rang non-stop. Officers whispered in corners. A few old-timers stared at their desks like the floor had just dropped out from under them. She didn't care. She walked past them all, straight to Chief Marquez's office. He met her at the door, a man trying very hard to appear calm while the roof cracked overhead. "You made a lot of enemies this week, Garcia," he said. "And I made some goddamn truth," she replied. He didn't argue. He gestured toward the TV behind his desk. News footage rolled, crime scene tape fluttering at the gravesite. Forensics digging up bones, state investigators walking out of Menendez's house with boxes of evidence. A voiceover, allegedly buried multiple reports and tampered with dispatch records related to the 1982 disappearance of Officer Valerie Cruz. Chief Marquez turned the volume down, slowly. "Internal Affairs is clean sweeping the top floor. I have 2 city council members demanding your badge." "Let them," Naomi said, "but not before I walk Valerie's casket." That hit. The chief nodded once. "You'll get your wish." The funeral was held the next morning. Full honors, bagpipes, mounted patrol. 21-gun salute. Naomi watched from the front row in dress blues, her badge polished to a mirror shine. Beside her sat Ruben Vega, stone-faced. Gabe Torres stood behind them, arms crossed, jaw clenched. Across the aisle, she caught sight of Valerie's mother, 80 now, frail, weeping, but proud. Naomi rose when the honor guard moved, walked to the flag-draped casket, set something on top before stepping back. Valerie's badge, cleaned, polished, whole. Not because it meant anything now, but because she had earned it. Later that night, Naomi sat in her apartment with a box of files, the originals, Valerie's notes, Kincaid's list, the map. There were still 2 red X's that hadn't been dug up. 2 more bodies, maybe. 2 more truths waiting under the dust. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered, a voice she recognized. Menendez, from county lockup. "You think this ends with me?" he asked, voice hoarse. "No," Naomi said. "I think it starts with you." A pause. "You're digging in the dark, detective, and there's more down there than bones." "I'm not afraid of the dark." She hung up, then opened a new file, labeled it X3, unknown, pending recovery, and wrote 1 line beneath it. "The badge means nothing, but the truth buries everything else." Naomi finished the case file at 2:14 a.m. Her apartment was dark except for the blue light of her monitor, casting shadows across the wall like ghosts coming to rest. The air smelled of old coffee and printer toner. Her fingers ached. Her neck was stiff. But the final line was typed. Victim, Officer Valerie Cruz. Cause of death, homicide, disposition. Buried in unauthorized grave off Old Route 87. Case status. Closed after 42 years. Perpetrators, Lieutenant Marcus Sims, deceased. Officer Darren Kinney, pending trial. Deputy Commissioner Timothy Menendez, in custody. Other persons of interest. William Kincaid, deceased, presumed murdered. Additional suspects, ongoing investigation. She saved the file, backed it up 3 times, printed 2 hard copies. 1 for IA, 1 for Valerie's mother. She picked up Valerie's recovered badge from her desk, held it in her palm, felt the weight of it, not the metal, the meaning, the promise it used to carry. Serve, protect, tell the truth. It had failed her, but Naomi didn't. Later that morning, she walked into the press conference flanked by Chief Marquez and the state AG. The podium microphones flickered with feedback. Reporters elbowed for space. Every camera in the city was pointed at her. She stepped forward. "This week," she began, "we found what no one was supposed to find." She held up the badge. "This belonged to Officer Valerie Cruz. She disappeared in 1982. The official story was that she abandoned her post, that she ran. She looked straight into the camera lens. That was a lie. Silence. She was murdered. By the same men she worked beside, men who wore the same badge and used it not to serve, not to protect, but to silence, to bury, to erase. Naomi's voice didn't shake. Not once. But the desert doesn't keep secrets forever. And the badge? It doesn't get to decide what the truth is. We do, and we're not finished. She stepped back. No questions, no spin, just the truth, delivered raw. That night, after the news vans packed up and the city slipped into the quiet unease of revelation, Naomi drove out to the desert one last time. She parked where the red X had been, walked out to the grave that was no longer a secret. A simple wooden cross stood in the dirt now, surrounded by stones. No flowers, no plaque, just one name burned into the wood by hand. Valerie Cruz, end of watch, August 7th, 1982. Found 42 years later. Naomi knelt. "I'm sorry it took this long," she whispered. "But we heard you. And we didn't stop." The wind carried her words into the dark. She stood, turned, and walked back toward the city lights rising on the horizon, toward the next grave, the next name, the next truth buried beneath the silence.